Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Donald Trump delivered the longest presidential address in modern history to a joint session of Congress Tuesday night, laying out his vision for the next 4 years while defending his efforts to dismantle large portions of the federal government. For 100 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes, Trump repeatedly lied and exaggerated about his accomplishments and his opponents' failures, deploying racist and dehumanizing language to describe immigrants, LGBTQ+ people, and his critics. Trump heaped praise on billionaire Elon Musk and his efforts to slash entire government agencies.
And to that end, I have created the brand-new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
Trump also repeated threats the U.S. will be reclaiming the Panama Canal from China after the Wall Street giant BlackRock said it would lead a consortium to purchase 2 Panama Canal ports from a Hong Kong-based conglomerate. The Panama Canal Authority is run entirely by the Panamanian government, not China, as Trump has falsely claimed. After headlines will air extended portions of President Trump's speech and get responses. Several Democrats boycotted Trump's address to the joint session of Congress. Others wore pink outfits as a symbol of protest or held signs with messages including "Save Medicaid" and "Musk steals." The most dramatic protests came near the start of Trump's speech when Texas Democratic Congressmember Al Green rose to speak, shaking his walking cane at Trump.
Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session.
Republican House leaders later called for Congressman Green to be censured. He spoke to reporters after his ejection from the House chamber.
Is the only punishment that you were kicked out, sir? Is there something?
I don't know. Whatever the punishment is, I'm not fighting the punishment. This is about the people who are being punished by virtue of losing their health care. This is the richest country in the world, and we have people who don't have good health care. We've got to do better. And now we're about to cut Medicaid, which is for poor people.
During his address to Congress, President Trump revealed he'd been sent a conciliatory message from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he's ready to come to the negotiating table and sign a deal to provide the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals and other resources. This comes just days after Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance berated Zelensky in the Oval Office and after Trump ordered the suspension of all U.S. military aid to Ukraine. On Tuesday, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proposed over $850 billion in new military spending, declaring we are in an era of rearmament, unquote. The Trump administration's cuts to the U.S. Agency for International Development are likely to cause enormous human suffering, leading to increased death and disability, accelerated disease spread, political instability, and heightened threats to U.S. national security. That's according to an internal USAID memo obtained by the New York Times, which looked at the impact Trump's freeze will have on life-saving humanitarian assistance if it's made permanent. The memo projects 1 million children will lose treatment for severe acute malnutrition each year. 200,000 children will become paralyzed with polio annually. Up to 18 million more people will become infected with malaria, with up to 166,000 additional deaths each year, and much more. The memo is written by USAID's Acting Assistant Administrator for Global Health, Nicholas Enrich. Over the weekend, Enrich was placed on administrative leave. Health officials in New York and New Jersey have identified several new cases of measles, coming amidst an outbreak of the highly contagious viral disease in Texas, with 159 cases, 22 hospitalizations, and 1 child death recorded since January. Fears of a wider epidemic have grown after Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. initially downplayed the outbreak, then promoted alternative treatments rather than vaccination to combat measles. In an interview that aired on Fox News Tuesday, Kennedy did not mention vaccines once, but said his agency is sending doses of steroids, antibiotics, and supplements to combat the measles outbreak.
Budesonide, which is a steroid, it's a 30-year-old steroid, and clarithromycin, and also cod liver oil, which has high concentrations of vitamin A and vitamin D.
A federal judge has extended a temporary injunction blocking Trump's executive order attempting to shut down nationwide access to gender-affirming care for transgender youth under 19. The judge's order means federal funding for hospitals and clinics that provide the care will remain in place. ACLU attorney Joshua Block welcomed the decision, writing, quote, "As Judge Herson has said himself, it's hard to fathom a form of discrimination more nefarious than that which pretends the group of people being targeted doesn't even exist," unquote. The Trump administration's preparing to slash the Internal Revenue Service's 90,000-person workforce in half through a mix of layoffs, attrition, and buyouts. That's on top of the roughly 7,000 IRS workers already laid off since Trump took office, most of them probationary workers fired as part of Elon Musk's mass purge of federal workers who lack civil service protections. Last month, 7 former IRS commissioners spanning both Democratic and Republican administrations since Ronald Reagan wrote a joint New York Times op-ed condemning Trump's cuts to the IRS. They write the cuts will, quote, shift the burden of funding the government from people who shirk their taxes to the honest people who pay them, and it will impede efforts by the IRS to modernize customer service and simplify the tax filing process for everyone, unquote. President Trump's threatened to withhold federal funds from U.S. universities if they allow protests to take place on college campuses. In a post to his Truth Social site, Trump also repeated plans to deport or jail immigrant students whom he described as agitators if they participate in campus protests. Trump added that U.S. students would be, quote, permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested, unquote. Trump's threats came after federal agencies, including the Justice Department, announced they would be investigating Columbia University over accusations of anti-Semitism on its campus, referring to the wave of peaceful student-led actions in support of Palestinian rights. In related news, a third student has been expelled from New York's Barnard College for participating in a Palestinian rights protest on campus. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has responded to President Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexican goods, promising to announce retaliatory tariffs at a weekend event. Mexico's delayed response appears aimed at de-escalating Trump's trade war. However, President Sheinbaum responded forcefully after the White House published what it called a fact sheet claiming her government has granted cartels safe havens to produce narcotics and to traffic them into the United States.
On
the night of March 3rd, last night, the White House published an offensive, defamatory, and unsubstantiated statement about the government of Mexico that we categorically deny and condemn.
The U.S. Supreme Court appears poised to block a historic $10 billion lawsuit brought by the Mexican government against 7 major U.S. gun manufacturers and a gun wholesaler for aiding and abetting the unlawful smuggling of hundreds of thousands of guns annually into Mexico, fueling violence by drug cartels. During oral arguments Tuesday, both liberal and conservative justices appeared to agree with U.S. gun makers that said Mexico's suit violates a 2005 statute, the Protecting Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which shields the firearms industry from most legal liability in U.S. courts. Catherine Stetson is a lawyer representing the Mexican government.
Mexico's complaint pleads that petitioners aided and abetted violations of specific federal gun laws and that those violations proximately caused Mexico's harm. That satisfies PLACA's predicate exception. First, the complaint details that petitioners deliberately supply the illegal Mexican market by selling guns through the small number of dealers that they know sell a large number of crime guns and who repeatedly sell in bulk to the cartel traffickers.
A warning to our audience, this story has descriptions of sexual violence against children. In Sudan, at least 221 children, some as young as 1 year old, have been subjected to rape by armed forces since the beginning of last year. That's according to a dire new report by UNICEF, which gives the first comprehensive look at mass sexual violence being used as a weapon of war against children, while Sudan's conflict between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces nears 2 years. One witness testimony read, quote, "After 9 at night, someone opens the door carrying a whip, selects one of the girls, takes her to another room. I could hear the little girl crying and screaming they were raping her," unquote. And in Serbia, the opening session of Parliament Tuesday came to a halt after opposition lawmakers threw smoke grenades and tear gas inside in solidarity with students who've led mass anti-government protests for the past 4 months. Opposition lawmakers say Parliament has no authority to pass new legislation before it confirms a transitional government following the January resignation of Serbian Prime Minister Miloš Vučević. Their protests erupted about an hour into session, with opposition lawmakers holding up a banner that read, "Serbia has risen so the regime would fall." As pink, white, and black smoke filled the Parliament chamber, hundreds of others rallied outside.
The only chance for this country is an expert transitional government that would create conditions for fair elections, free elections, and comb through the ballot lists, which are catastrophic, and prepare for free elections in about 6 to 9 months. That is the only way. Otherwise, protests should simply be held everywhere, because this has really gone beyond all limits.
At least 3 Serbian lawmakers were reportedly injured. Protests against government corruption and inefficiency started in response to the collapse of a roof at a train station in November in the northern city of Novi Sad, which killed 15 people. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.